Chapter 1. The woman's name was Anya, and she had been seeking revenge against the man who kidnapped her mother for as long as she could remember. His name was Victor, and he was a ruthless criminal who had been responsible for the deaths of countless people. Anya had vowed to make him pay for what he had done, and she had spent years training and preparing for the day when she would finally confront him. Anya's mother, Maria, had been kidnapped when Anya was just a child. Anya had witnessed the kidnapping firsthand, and the image of her mother being dragged away by Victor's men had been seared into her memory. Anya had never given up hope of finding her mother, but as the years passed, she began to realize that the chances of finding her alive were slim. One day, Anya received a tip that Victor would be attending a meeting at a remote warehouse on the outskirts of town. Anya knew that this was her chance to finally confront him, and she immediately made plans to ambush him. On the night of the meeting, Anya snuck into the warehouse and hid in the shadows. She waited patiently as Victor and his men arrived. Once they were inside, Anya struck. She burst from the shadows and attacked Victor, taking him by surprise. Anya was a skilled fighter, and she was able to hold her own against Victor for a time. However, Victor was a much larger and stronger man, and he eventually overwhelmed her. He knocked her to the ground and began to strangle her. Just as Anya was about to lose consciousness, she heard a gunshot. Victor staggered backward, clutching his chest. Anya looked up and saw her mother standing behind her, a gun in her hand. Maria had been held captive by Victor for years, but she had managed to escape. She had tracked Victor to the warehouse, and she had arrived just in time to save her daughter's life. Victor collapsed to the ground, dead. Anya and Maria stood there for a moment, taking it all in. Then, they fell into each other's arms and wept tears of joy. Chapter 2. Anya and Maria returned home, finally reunited after all these years. Anya was grateful to have her mother back, but she knew that their ordeal was not over. Victor's death would only create a power vacuum in the criminal underworld, and Anya knew that there would be others who would want to take his place. Anya decided that she needed to do something to stop the violence and corruption that Victor had represented. She decided to use her skills and training to become a vigilante, fighting crime and protecting the innocent. Anya created a new identity for herself, calling herself the Shadow. She donned a black costume and mask, and she began to patrol the streets at night, searching for criminals to bring to justice. The Shadow quickly became a legend in the city. She was feared by criminals and revered by the innocent. She was a symbol of hope and justice, and she brought a much-needed sense of order to the city. Chapter 3. One night, the Shadow was patrolling the city when she came across a gang of criminals robbing a bank. The Shadow intervened, and a fight ensued. The Shadow was outnumbered, but she was able to defeat the criminals and stop the robbery. The Shadow's actions caught the attention of the police, who were eager to catch the elusive vigilante. However, the Shadow was always one step ahead of them. She used her skills and training to evade capture, and she continued to fight crime in the shadows. The Shadow's activities also caught the attention of the criminal underworld. Many criminals were afraid of her, but others saw her as a threat to their power. A number of criminals put out bounties on the Shadow's head, but no one was able to collect. The Shadow's reputation continued to grow, and she became a beacon of hope for the people of the city. She was a symbol that even in the darkest of times, justice would always prevail. Chapter 4. One day, the Shadow received a tip that Victor's right-hand man, Ivan, was planning to smuggle a large shipment of weapons into the city. The Shadow knew that she had to stop him, so she began to investigate. Anya discovered that Ivan was planning to smuggle the weapons through the port. On the night of the shipment, the Shadow snuck into the port and hid in the shadows. She waited patiently as Ivan and his men arrived. Once the shipment was unloaded, the Shadow struck. She attacked Ivan and his men, taking them by surprise. The Shadow was able to defeat Ivan and his men, and she destroyed the shipment of weapons. Ivan was furious at his defeat, and he vowed to get revenge on the Shadow. He put a team of his best assassins on her trail, but the Shadow was always one step ahead of